Hi everyone, I'm Mikey Stiller and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this really exciting and different webinar that we're doing with you today. So as you've probably noticed over the past week, we've done a couple of webinars and we've gotten such a great response from everyone, really loving the content. And so we wanted to just offer another webinar, and this one is going to be really cool. We have one of Bob's closest students over the last 8 to 10 years joining us. His name is Araj Vasugi. He's created spectacular results, and he's going to share with you the biggest one, maybe a few lessons that he's learned from Bob from studying closely with him all that time. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Why don't you go ahead and start typing in the chat where you're joining us from. We're really happy to have you with us. And as soon as Araj tells the story, Becca and I are really going to prime him with some questions so we can get really good content for you guys. Becca?
Hey, Mikey. So excited to be with you guys today. So I just wanted to chime in and say how excited I am to be here with Arash because, I've worked with him for a good, 5 or 6 years now, and he helps me all the time because he is such an avid student of Bob's material, seen such incredible results. I know he's going to have some really impactful lessons for you. So let's not waste any time. Arash, are you there?
I am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great.
So I was wondering if, just to get us started, you could go ahead and share your story. I know you've been studying Bob's material for a long time, but I think you were studying for a little while before actually getting any results. So how did you see that change, and how long exactly have you been studying Bob's material?
Sure. I've studied Bob's materials a little over 10 years. Now, the first 3 years, I didn't get any results. I was buying all his audio programs, all his books, listening to Earl Nightingale. I did everything from his programs or from YouTube that I saw, but I didn't create any results. And then I had a big life moment happen. I was working at a job and my company sold. The new company wanted to cut my pay and I quit. And I went to lunch with an acquaintance that day and I told him what was going on. And this was 3 weeks before my wedding. And he said, "You need to talk to a friend of mine." And I said, "Sure, who's your friend?" He said, "Bob Proctor." I said, "You're kidding me." And he said, "No, I'll get him on the phone with you." So he ended up connecting me with Bob, and Bob got on the phone with me and he said, "Well, what is it that you want?" And I said, "I want to create a life of freedom doing what I love." He says, "Well, what do you love?" I said, "I'm not sure." I said, "I love helping people." And he said, "Well, what is it that you earn right now?" And I said, "Nothing. I just lost my job actually today, and I'm getting married in 3 weeks." He said, "Well, we better get to work." And then he said, "What's the most you've earned in a year?" And I said, 110,000 in a year. He said, "How would you like to do that in a month?" And then I started laughing. And he says, "I'm not joking." He says, "You don't have to believe it, but you just have to believe that I believe that I could show you how." And that's when it really got my attention. And I told Bob, I said, "I've been studying your material avidly for the past 3 years, but I haven't created any results." And he said, "It's because you don't know how to study. You're studying it intellectually." And he said, "It's very common." He said, "Most people think they know this, but what it is they know about it." And he said, "Are you really serious? I want you to be honest with me." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You'll do what I tell you." And I said, "Yes," because obviously my way isn't working. And he said, "I want you to get involved in my coaching program and do exactly what I tell you to do." He said, "Don't do half, don't do 3/4. He said, "It's not going to be hard work, but it's going to be work because you have to change your paradigms." And I said to him, just because where my mindset was at the time, I said, "Will it work?" Because I can't afford for it not to work because I had just lost my job and I was getting married and all these stories I was telling myself. Anyway, he said, "Until you find out that I'm lying or I don't know what I'm talking about, then you can come back to me." He said, "I don't lie and I really know what I'm talking about." And he was very blunt and I really appreciate it because he said, "Listen, I don't really care if you do this." And he said, "I'm not saying that to be insensitive, but I'm going to continue helping people, but you're going to continue getting the same results if you don't do it. And you're risking more by not doing it than by doing it." Then it was such an emotional impact. You know how Bob Becca always says that there's 2 ways to change a paradigm. One is through an emotional impact and another is through space repetition and elite level coaching. Well, I think this was both. It was both the coaching he was giving me on this call, and it was an emotional impact, because I literally made the decision right there that I was going to do it. And I gave myself a command that I was just going to be naive enough to trust him and just do exactly what he told me to do. And that's when everything changed. In that first year, I mean, there were some big transformations that happened. I lost 42 pounds of weight. I discovered my purpose, which is what I do now, which is now being partnered up with Bob and you all in PGI. And I improved my income by over $32,000 a month. So, I mean, it blew me away. And ever since then, I had all these people in my environment who said, "You're crazy. What are you doing? You need to go find another job." And I just trusted the path I was going on. And those same people who were talking directly to me with their doubts and behind my back now have actually went through the coaching themselves. So it's been quite, when I think back on it now from where I am today, and I did achieve far greater than even what Bob promised me in this short amount of time. And, you know, I think I'm just getting started, like Bob always says too.
You know, Raj, I've known you for a long time, and I've worked with you for a long time. I actually am really good friends with your wife, as you know, but I met her before I ever met you. And I remember one of the first things she told me about you was that you were really into personal development, and you would wake up every day and say, what's your goal for today? And that was during the 3-year period where you didn't get any results. I mean, that was a year before you ever even started working for Bob. So I think a lot of people can relate to that, but how did you keep going and not get discouraged and give up?
I mean, I did get discouraged. I'd be lying to you to say that I didn't get discouraged, but my desire was so strong, and I believed in the material so much. And I always said it was me. It wasn't the material. There was something I was doing. I was missing something. So I remember vividly, I had such a great attitude about it, even when I was going through such transition, that I couldn't give up. There was times I wanted to give up, but then the next day I'd wake up and get back at it. One of the things that I've really take pride in is that I'm always course correcting what I'm doing, and I'm always studying, you know. And I always tell the people that I mentor, if you're not studying daily, you're making a huge mistake. I remember Bob told me one day, he said, if you're not willing to study an hour a day, then you don't deserve to win. And I took that to heart. And I said, if he's saying that after studying this for 55 years, then I'm just going to do what he tells me. And, you know, for the people who are listening to this, if you guys take anything from what I'm saying, is I was in a bad spot. Some of you are probably in good spots. Some of you are in just kind of coasting, and some of you might be in a tough spot. But I was in a very difficult spot. And if I can do it, I think anybody can do it. All you have to do is really invest the time in yourself, invest the money into personal development. And I think the only person you invest in is Bob. I was going and investing in all these different people. So I'd get some information here, then I'd go get some information here. And it was a mistake because I never stuck with one until I met Bob. And I'm telling you, like, Bob just wants to help people, and he'll help you in a big way, just like he did me, if you really put the time and effort into it.
And Raj, what do you think really clicked for you when you had that phone call with Bob? I know you said you had this strong desire, but I imagine you had a strong desire even before that call with Bob, and maybe it was a little bit greater being so close to your wedding. But what do you think? And I've watched you grow, and you've gone, you know, up a level and then up a level, and then, you know, you've taken quantum leaps. What do you think it is that keeps getting you to the next level?
I think it's just understanding what goals are, and not just setting goals, but it's really, when you set them, it's already done in your mind. You know, Bob told me one time, I had a conversation with him, and I had this really great week. Like, everything was working, and I said, I wish I would do that every week. And he says, well, why don't you? And I said, I don't know. He says, it's because you haven't accepted an idea. And he said, all you have to do is accept the idea. I said, it's just as simple as that. He said, Rush, this is simple, what I'm teaching. He said, most people make it harder. You make it harder. It's the paradigm that wants to control you. And that's what I've done ever since. So if I don't take a quantum leap every year, I'm not happy, because I know with what our mind has capabilities of, we have everything in front of us to make a big jump, and that's what I do. And like I said, like if you've spent any time being mentored by Bob or spent around him, he transfers his level of belief on you. So when I was on that call, it was so different, to answer your question, because he just said, do exactly what I tell you to do. And I've read those in books that said, find a mentor and do what they tell you. But I never knew where to find a mentor. And then I went, I mean, you could listen to audios, but I mean true mentorship. And he said, just do exactly what I tell you to do. And that's what I've done. And I've never stopped doing it.
As you just mentioned paradigms, and as you were talking, I asked the chat what their biggest challenge was right now. And we had someone type in changing my paradigm. Do you have any tips for someone who's struggling with that right now?
Well, yeah, I do have some tips. The first thing you have to do is stop empowering the paradigm. You want to create an image in your mind of what you want. It is so important, because most people are always thinking, change paradigm, change paradigm. Well, every time you're focusing on the paradigm, you're empowering it. So let me read you something that I think will help you. Give me 1 second. I think this is something that I study daily, that I think will help the person who asked this question. It says, man attracts what he is. The art of life is to sustain the feeling of the wish fulfilled and let things come to you, not to go after them or think they flee away. Observe your inner talking and remember your aim. Do they match? Does your inner talking match what you would say audibly had you achieved your goal? The individual's inner speech and actions attract the conditions of his life. Through uncritical self-observation of your inner talking, you find where you are in the inner world, and where you are in the inner world is where you are in the outer world. So this is a book called Power of Awareness by Neville, but that's what you have to do. Most people are trying to change their goals by focusing on where they are. You can't focus where you are. You got to focus where your goal is, and you've got to live in that space all day long. You've got to see it, be it, act it, feel it. And, I think it's actually a difficult thing, because the paradigm controls us, and that's why the study is so important. But to this person, I encourage you to just, there's a practice that I do daily, is whenever I have a goal, I write out a script of my life a year from now with that goal. And then I record it on my phone. Okay. And there's an app I use, it's called Voice Loop. So it'll loop it, and I'll listen to it for 20 minutes a day. And I usually do it until I hit the goal. But I could be working out and listening to it, and that's the repetition of that image. But with your voice already being at that goal is where you're going to get the paradigm to shift. And you're going to know when the paradigm shifts by how you feel. And don't let your present reality control you. Just really live in that space.
Hey, Rosh, you were talking about Bob being your mentor earlier, and I was just curious. So I know that I personally have seen so much more growth in my life when I have a mentor that I'm working with regularly, and I think that people feel like you can't have a mentor virtually. Like I've got lots of mentors. Wallace Wattles is a mentor of mine. Napoleon Hill is a mentor of mine. So you've had stages in your life where you probably were working towards things without a mentor, and then working with one. What advice would you give somebody who's, feeling like they're a little bit stagnant and would love to be working with somebody, but don't have somebody right there? Like, how do you think that our programs impact people by giving them a mentor to work with on a regular basis through our material?
Well, that's a great question, Beck. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't think you can even compare having a mentor and studying from afar. They're completely different. Like Bob told me one time, he said, how come you're reading that book? And I said, well, because the book gets me to start focusing on what I want. He goes, okay. But he said, until you teach it to somebody, you don't have the full impact. And I thought about that, and I remember Napoleon Hill saying that. But then I remember talking to Bob about mentorship just in general. He said, if you want to be successful, you have to have a mentor. And he said, it doesn't matter the amount of money it costs to pay for the mentor, because your return is going to be 100-fold. And I remember when he told me that, and I thought about it, and I was thinking about when I was in such a tough position and I invested several $1,000s to do the coaching program, which was a lot of money for me at the time. And now I look back, even that year, like taken in a short term, I mean, my results improved by over, $300,000, which with the return on investment was huge. And I've done it both ways, so I know the difference. Like, I don't just have a mentor now with just Bob. Like, for my health, I have a trainer, I have a delivery service for nutrition. Like, I have understood the importance of it and has impacted my life greatly because of it. And one last thing, like, if you guys are sitting there, anybody on this call, I help people a lot try to get through this because it's hard because the paradigm controls them. But the amount, you're going to spend the money on a mentor. If any of you really want big results, I'm telling you, it is the single best investment you will ever make in your life, and it will pay you 100 times. Because people are always spending money on vacations. They're spending money on clothes. They're spending money on this. But if they really look back and say, how much did I spend this year on things that I don't even really use? Then think about, if I would have used that on myself, where would I be today? It's a good question to ask yourself because you're going to spend the time and the money anyway. I encourage everybody to spend it on themselves. That's how you're going to get and create massive jumps and really create freedom.
All right, Araj, now if you had to pinpoint your one single biggest lesson from Bob, and I know this is going to be hard, what would it be?
I have a story that pops into my mind. I was stuck one day, and I called him, and I said, I'm stuck. And he said, well, why? I said, because I don't feel like I'm creating a quantum leap, and that's what I'm wanting. And he said, well, how do you know you're not creating the quantum leap? He said, the evidence of absence isn't the absence of evidence. He said, look what you've done over the last year. You've created a quantum leap. You're looking at a quantum leap in short term. It's not short term, it's long term. And he said, you're letting your results control you. And he said, every time you do that, you're losing. So if your results are good, you feel good. If your results aren't good, you don't feel good. He says, you control your results by how you feel. And he said, I want you to remember this. He said, a mentor told me this one time, and it changed my view on this. And he said, I want to share it with you. He said, a true professional in life has a great attitude no matter what. He says anybody can have a great attitude when things are going good, but he said the true professionals even have a better attitude when things are not going well. Now, if anybody, whether it's you, Mikey, Becca, anybody listens to Bob talk about attitude, first time I heard him talk about it, I was like, oh, it means you're positive. Then he went deeper with me. He said, no, I mean, that's not true. He says, you could be an upbeat person, but still operate from a negative mental attitude, because he said, if you're ever coming from lacking limitation, you're operating from a negative mental attitude, so you're going to attract what's in harmony with your attitude. So I would tell you, I've had so many lessons, but that was one of the biggest that really shifted a lot of things for me in my life.
Thanks, Araj. That's so powerful. One of the things that I let people know whenever we were inviting everyone to this webinar was that we would have a special giveaway for them. And I know that Success Puzzle is a program that you've gone through, and everybody who's on the line is going to get a copy of Success Puzzle. Could you just talk a little bit about the program?
Well, I mean, I've studied the program many times, and if you guys will actually follow it to a T and really just focus on this program with a lot of repetition, and really don't just go through it once. You really keep going through it and going through it and going through it. You're going to get the most benefit out of it. It's actually one of my favorite programs because Bob puts it together like exactly the name, like a puzzle. He pieces it together. And in this program, there was something that he said that really hit me at the core. He said, success is not a secret, it's a system. Once you learn the system, you'll be successful. And he said it's the little things compounded over time that create the big results. So I think, first off, make sure the people on this call don't just get this program and just listen to it once and be like, oh, I've heard this before. Look at your results. really do a lot of repetition with this and really follow it from the workbook. Are they getting the workbook as well?
Yep, they sure.
Yeah, from the workbook, do the lessons. And I promise you, you guys will be very grateful you did.
Hey, Raj, one of the key lessons in that program is decision. And I know a lot of people struggle with making decisions. What would you say to someone about decision making and making a decision to really look into working with Bob on a regular basis, adopting him as a mentor, and applying this material on a regular basis?
Well, Napoleon Hill wrote a whole chapter on decision in Think and Grow Rich. I think it's the #1 key to success, because until somebody makes a decision, nothing happens. And I always tell the clients that I mentor, if they say, well, I'm interested, I said, that's a bad place to be. Because I love this quote by Dr. Kenneth Blanchard. He says, there's a difference between being interested and being committed and creating the life you want. He says, when you're interested, you do what's convenient. When you're committed, you do whatever it takes. You accept only results, not excuses. Now, if anybody has spent any time with Bob, he will tell you he wants a decision like this, because he says the universe loves speed. So if any of you want to change your results, you can't sit there. You don't worry about the how. You've got to make a definite decision, because once you make the decision, your mind focuses on how you can, not why you can't. Like if any of you have studied, which I'm sure if you've studied Bob, you've probably studied Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill talks about decision. He says after interviewing 500 of the most successful people in the world, he says the one common denominator is decision making. He says the winners in life make decisions quickly and change them slow, if at all. He says the people who lose go back and forth and back and forth. Now, I have a challenge for the people on this call. Think about the time where you guys made a definite decision and what happened. Now, think about the time where you said, I really want to change my life, but think about your actions. See, most people stay stuck, Becca, because their ideas are stillborn. They don't make a definite decision. You just got to make it and go. It is the key to success. Go study any successful person. They talk about two things all the time. They talk about a positive mental attitude and decision making. And I don't care who it is. I could be athletes, actresses, entrepreneurs. Think about this past Olympics. I was listening to an interview by Michael Phelps. He didn't have a great Olympics, the last Olympics, and he said he almost gave up, but then he made a definite decision that this was going to be his best Olympics. And I don't even remember how many medals he won, but that could give everybody an example.
Thanks, Raj. You know, we just put a link in the chat so that you can download your copy of Success Puzzle. And there's also a web form just to the right of our video feed. And that web form is if you are interested in being mentored by Bob in one of our elite programs, and if this webinar has inspired you to take on Bob as a mentor, Raj, maybe you can talk a little bit about what that might look like. What would being mentored by Bob look like?
Well, Bob's very clear about what mentorship is. And one of the things that he shared with me, he says, I'm not going to coach you your way. I'm going to coach you my way, because I know my way works. Bob, I always thought mentorship was just one-on-one. And he said, that's not one-on-one. He says, that's glorified babysitting. He says, what I do is get you to create permanent results. And if you work with Bob, I mean, he doesn't, he's the most giving person, but he's so honest that he tells you how it is so you get to your results. And when you get mentored by him, it's the most dynamic, amazing things. I had a client who called me about 10 days ago, and she said she can't believe what her results have been in the first 5 months of the mentorship. She said she never spent more than $50 on anything for herself, whether it's a purse, whether it's this, and now she's improved her income by $12,000 a month. So, I mean, with the mentorship, Bob works with you every week via live webinars. You have question and answers with him every 3 weeks. You have accountability email coaching from one of his coaches. And the whole purpose is really to create a massive quantum leap and create permanent results.
Raj, I gotta say, your dog is cracking me up back there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's hilarious. All right, thank you. You know, I think that everyone on the line is probably interested in being mentored by Bob. That's why you're in our Bob Proctor Live Facebook group, or maybe you got an email to join this webinar. It was sent to a special group of people who are active on our list. And so we thought that you would really enjoy learning these key lessons from Araj, one of Bob's closest students, and then kind of get a vision for what your life might look like being mentored by Bob. So if you really think about it, and you were mentored by Bob for the next year or the next 6 months, where do you see your life? Where do you think that that would take you? And I think if you get crystal clear on that and fill out the form to the right of our video, you'll be really happy you did. And in 6 months, you'll look back and it'll be one of the best decisions you've ever made. Raj, do you have anything that you want to say before we close up?
Just thanks for the opportunity to share. I mean, I really, when I changed my life, I made a commitment that I wanted to teach other people. So everybody out there, just know you're a decision away from making a change. If you put the time and effort in, you'll see, you'll be blown away where you are 6 months to a year from now, like Mikey said.
And Becca, I think you might have something else to share too.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say thank you, Arash, for this call. You know, I've had, over the years, had the pleasure of working with you so many different times, and you're always a great mentor to me, and I always get so much out of all of our conversations, and it's always so clear that you're going into every interaction that you have with the intention of helping the other person on the line or whoever it is that you're working with. So I love working with you. I love listening to your experience and everything that you've learned from Bob, because I always have a big takeaway from it. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing, and just encourage everybody on the line to fill out that form and learn more about what you can do to be working closely with Bob and Arash and all of us here at PGI. And just to let you know, we have a team of people standing by that'll give you a call within 24 hours after you fill out that form. So go ahead and take action now, make the decision like Arash mentioned, and we really look forward to working with you.
I could not agree more. Thank you all so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these in the future. I think everyone really enjoys it. I know I enjoy getting to be on the line with Becca and Araj and share some of the lessons with everyone. Araj, this was a great call. Thank you for all the value you delivered.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.